first question to you, Daniel, would be that as someone who has worked at the intersection of AI research, technology, and conscious AI you're working with, what do you think and how would you define AI literacy, and is there a need for it now more than ever?
I think that absolutely AI is not a bubble. It's going to be impacting our lives over the coming decade in ways we can't imagine, and I think it's really important that we all lean into the big questions that are facing both us in business, and also society. AI literacy for me is understanding what AI is good at and what AI is not good at. Where is it important for humans to focus on developing their skills, developing their competencies. It's really important to understand also where AI goes right and where it goes wrong, and how to mitigate some of the failures, as well as also the trajectory in terms of how these technologies are developing. We currently build to kind of where the technology currently is, but the reality is that these technologies are developing at a rapid pace, and we need to be making sure that we're developing for the future and not just now. So and it doesn't take much actually to get your head around the landscape. You don't have to go into the details about how the algorithms work and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't take much, only a few hours, to really get an appreciation for what these technologies can do and what they will be able to do in the future.
Right. So just yesterday I was having this conversation with a mother whose daughter has just passed 10th grade, and she wants her daughter to understand about AI because she feels that there's a need of AI learning more than ever. But how should one start with it? Because there are data and technology guys who are working on the models, building stuff. But for a everyday citizen, everyday user, how should one begin with? What are the first few things that one should learn about AI today?
I think you've used the word user, and I think that's really the answer, is to use it, to start to engage with it, see what it can do, see what it can't do. AI still, hallucinates. It still produces answers that are not accurate. So I wouldn't advise people to necessarily take the output of the AIs as truth. But certainly, question the output and start using these technologies. And again, these technologies soon will be agentic. They'll be have the ability to have agency, not just interact with human beings, but interact with our computers and interact with the world. And the sooner you start to kind of use these technologies, understand the power of them, the better you'll be prepared. I would also argue that learning about how to engineer systems, so learning some rudimentary concepts in engineering is really important, because as human beings we think about the happy path, we think about the best case scenario. Engineers think about what happens when things go wrong, and they test and mitigate those risks. So use these systems, but also think about the consequences of them going wrong.
Right. And like you based in US, if I'm right, and how do you see India catching up with the AI race? Do you see that India is building some new things, or we still need to work a lot in this domain?
Well, I'm based in the UK, and so
I'm sorry, UK. You're based in the UK.
No. I do live between different places, and I think at the moment there's a lot of money that's required and energy required to build models, but where there is scarcity, there is innovation, and the fact is that your brain, human brains, operate on the power of a light bulb. We learn incredibly quickly. We only require a few pieces of data to learn what things are. We don't need massive amounts of information. We don't need massive amounts of energy. And I think what we'll see over the coming years is that those jurisdictions, those institutes, those organizations that look towards how our biological brains work and to use some of those concepts, what we'll find is that we can build much more efficient, much more adaptable AIs. There's a huge amount of innovations yet to be created to allow us to have AIs operating like our biological brains, and that's an opportunity for every company and country to catch up.
Right. And I remember when I attended your conference, you were talking about how AI can clone us for different projects. I think you were talking about in HR, in human resource, how we can create cloned AIs so that they can do the monotonous work, and then we can build our creativity more. And recently I had this discussion with an artist, a photographer, who was talking about originality. So when someone says that humans have originality, their creativity is original, I somehow feel that AI hallucinates, humans also lie. AI is biased, humans also have ideologies. AI is learning, humans have also learned on books and textbooks and different online links for so many years. So what is originality? Is there a definition in respect to AI specifically and versus humans, if we talk about?
Well, WPP is often regarded as the most creative company in the world, and so AI and creativity is at the forefront of my mind at the moment. And I think anybody that says that AI is not creative doesn't understand AI or doesn't understand creativity. There are lots of interesting spectrums with respect to what creativity is. I actually describe it as the Monet problem. The first question is, how would you create the best rendition of a cat standing on a car in the style of Monet? There's an infinite possible set of renditions of that image of the cat standing on the car in the style of Monet, but one will resonate the most. And there's a creative process in trying to identify that rendition. I also asked the question, how would you create Monet? How would you come up with Impressionism, a new genre that's never ever been thought about? And actually we can use AI to try to now predict new genres. So I think the fact is that AI can be creative, and some of the work that we've been doing in WPP is embedding the kind of creative genius of our creatives into AI so that it can actually ideate and come up with ideas that are on par with some of our creative geniuses. And that isn't providing an existential threat to those creatives. What it's doing is giving them a tool to allow them to actually push the bounds of creativity. And that's what really I'm excited about, is using AIs and human beings to elevate the creativity of humans.
Right, and this is a direct answer to my next question. So you're building Conscium. Can you elaborate more about that, and how do you see conscious AI? When you say conscious AI, what does it mean and where are we going with it?
Yes, so Conscium is a spin-out of WPP, and the primary objective or hypothesis is it safe for humanity to build aligned conscious AI? And that requires us to understand what is consciousness. It requires us to understand how to align an AI's values or moral system with some human moral system. So lots of big philosophical questions I think need to be addressed. Conscium is providing two commercial opportunities. One is the verification of AIs. When people build AIs, when people build agents, we want to verify them for their skills, their capability, but also for their moral profile, and maybe even test for consciousness. And also over the coming years, as I've mentioned, there's this new type of technology emerging that's referred to as the next generation of AI, called neuromorphics. And the reality is that neuromorphics are essentially brains or AIs that are operating much more like biological brains, and they will power our devices like drones and hoovers and robots. And because they're more biologically orientated, there's a possibility that they can become sentient. And so I think over the next 5-10 years, we're going to have to face into this big question of what does it mean to build sentient machines. Between now and then, we're really interested in building new types of AI capability that drive more effectiveness and efficiency in business. But it does beg the question of what happens if we actually build machines that are sentient. And Conscium's goal is to lean into that big question.
So going further, do we see lines blurring between the machinery and humans? Is it going to diminish? Because humans have this concern that AI is going to take our jobs, it is going to take our positions, and those basic concerns are out there in the market. So what would be your take on this? Blurring lines between machines and humans. Where do you see both the personas in the next 5 years?
Well, there's a whole spectrum of different types of consciousness, from insect consciousness to the animal level consciousness to human level consciousness to superhuman consciousness. And so we need to be thinking about that whole kind of spectrum. But I think certainly over the next 5 years, AIs are going to be used to replace repetitive, mundane tasks, and that's going to enable people to be more productive, more purposeful, focusing on the things that they want to be doing. So I'm actually very excited about sort of the Cambrian explosion that AI is enabling over the next 5 years. I think it will create and enable people to create innovations and swarm around those innovations. So I'm very excited. But I think beyond 5 years, nobody really knows what they're talking about if you make predictions. And the concern, if I'm being honest, from one side of the argument is that if AI can free up whole jobs, it probably will. And if that happens very quickly and our economies can't rebalance fast enough, then it could lead to social unrest. And we have a duty of care to mitigate those risks. And I think that's the role of the government and business to think about things like 4-day working week and universal basic income. That said, if we get the timing right, by removing making things more productive, by removing frictions, then you can actually reduce the cost of goods. You could bring the cost of goods of food, healthcare, energy, transport, education down so much that they become free, that they become abundant. So one of the promises of AI is that whilst frictions are being removed from the creation and dissemination of goods, that brings the cost down, making them more abundant, freeing people to then use their time to contribute to humanity however they want. So imagine being born into a world where there might not be access to paid work, but everything you need to survive and thrive as a human being is free. I don't know when that world will exist, but that's one of the promises of AI.
Right, but when you're speaking like that, there are two sections to it. One is the mundane tasks are going to be replaced by AI. So the technology is driving the future, and it is moving forward, pushing forward. Newer technologies are coming into the picture, and mundane tasks are going to be removed. But the other side involves the human angle, where you say the cost of living and the government schemes, free schemes, 4 days a week, all these things are still dependent on humans, the leaders of the world. But what if they're not able to take the right decision? Don't you think there's going to be a striking imbalance between both the sections? And so maybe what we see right now as an opportunity turn out to be a disaster in the near future?
I think first of all, it goes back to your original point, which is what is AI literacy. I think it's really important that we educate everybody in understanding, the impact and the power of these technologies, so that we make good decisions. The fact is that the future has not been created. It's within our gift to create the future. And one of my jobs is to educate people to make sure that we're making good decisions. As it happens, most of the people that I know that are becoming or have become economically free, they're not sitting at home bored and depressed. They typically use their time, their creativity, their assets to try and contribute somehow to humanity. I feel like as we free people more from these economic constraints, they will use their time, their assets to actually free other people up. So it's called, often referred to as a protopia. It's not a utopia. I don't think anybody would agree on what a utopia is, but it's a system. A protopia is a system that is getting better over time. And then that's one of the promises of AI, is to make that virtuous cycle work.
Perfectly said. And I just hope that our leaders realize that. And other than AI literacy, just last question, if I put this to you, 3 skills do you think, other than AI trainings and technology and literacy, 3 skills that can work for the future generations, the new students, the younger kids who are going to grow up, the 3 skills that they need, if you have to define that? Three
yeah,
skills.
well, so first of all, one isn't necessarily a skill, it's knowledge. So learn about yourself, learn about society, psychology, philosophy, understand what it means to be human, and to figure out how to find purpose. I think the second skill is critical thinking and reasoning, and I think that we all know that that's important. And finally, as I mentioned already, this idea of being able to orchestrate complex systems, whether that be people or AIs or a combination of people of AIs, orchestrating and inspiring complex systems and identifying and mitigating failure points. But what we found in WPP is that those people that get the best out of the AIs are people that have broad knowledge about the humanities, about the classics, about anthropology, that they're able to understand things like lighting and aperture and camera angles if you learn photography or art history. They're able to ask questions of the AI and get much better answers than certainly I can. So having this breadth of knowledge is super useful in being able to utilize these AIs.
Right. Thank you so much, Daniel, for this thought-provoking conversation, and I enjoyed every bit of it. I'm really looking forward to seeing you in person someday again in India or maybe some other place. So this was all from me in the AI literacy series today, and this was such a thought-provoking conversation with Daniel, and I'm hoping my audience got some inputs from this conversation. So we'll meet next time, next week with a new guest, new topic. Till then, stay safe and be careful.